Welcome back everybody to another MOTOBOB video. Now this is the Suzuki GSX-8S, their brand new parallel twin-powered bike for 2023.
To me, it certainly looks the part, but it does have its work cut out this year because this part of the more affordable middleweight naked motorcycle market is absolutely chock full of options, with most of the major manufacturers having something to offer.
So does the Suzuki have what it takes to cut through, and is it worth the consideration if you're looking to buy this sort of bike? Well, today we're going to take it for a spin and find out.
So we'll start with the engine, and this is their all-new 776cc parallel twin that they've also employed in their V-Strom 800DE adventure bike. And I think the key thing to understand is that they're calling it a long stroke design, so the cylinders are relatively tall, and this gives it more of an emphasis on torquiness rather than top-end revs. Peak power comes in at just over 80 horses at 8,500 RPM, which is sort of middling in this market. It's more than the Yamaha MT-07 and Kawasaki Z650, for example, but not quite as much as the Honda Hornet or KTM 790 Duke. But the thing is, peak torque at 78 Nm at 6,800 RPM, well, it's right up there with only the KTM able to beat it.
And look, out on the road, that's exactly how it feels. It does run out of steam a little bit at the top, but down low it's got loads of grunt and snap, and it's a very entertaining bike to ride when you're blasting between corners, especially if you've got it in the A mode, which is the most responsive. At road speeds it's plenty enough to raise the odd in-helmet smile, and it's got a nice feel to it as well. You've got the 270-degree crank, it gives it a bit of that aggressive sound and feel, a bit of V-twin soul. And while that particular engine configuration admittedly is plenty common nowadays, you'll find all over the place, you know, this is actually a really good one. I also like that you get an up and down quick shifter as standard on this bike. It's nice and crisp and precise, and a quick shifter always adds a bit of a sporty and premium feel, so at this end of the market, you know, the more budget friendly stuff, it is a nice bonus.
All round, this is a very nice new engine from Suzuki that feels like it's been designed with real-world riding in mind rather than just chasing spec sheet numbers. It's well balanced and smooth, and that low-end focus means it rarely gets bogged down if you're lazy with the gears. And sure, out-and-out peak power can't match some of the competition, but riding it in isolation, I found it to be a very pleasant experience. Now, before we get onto how this bike handles, I'd just like to say a massive thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. They recently announced their first ever beard trimmer, which I've been trying out for the past couple of months, and it's absolutely awesome. With the Beard Hedger Pro, you get a whizzy 7,250 RPM motor and titanium coated blades, so it can easily cut through those wiry beard hairs with no problem at all. I also love the zoom wheel, which allows you to cycle through 20 different cutting lengths with just one guard, so whether you've got a short stubble or a full-on pirate beard, the Beard Hedger Pro will do the job. Plus, they offer it as part of their awesome kit, which comes with the absolute works to keep your beard in A1 condition. From shampoo and conditioner to beard balm and oil, a travel case, a brush and comb, and some precision beard scissors for those tricky finishing touches. It's a brilliant selection of products which I'd thoroughly recommend, so head to the link down in the description below and use the code MOTOBOB and you'll get a whopping 20% off plus free international shipping. It's a heck of a deal, so do check it out, and once again, a massive thanks to Manscaped for their support.
It's hard not to compare this bike to the Hornet too much, but they are two new middleweight twins from Japan, and they are aiming at a similar audience. And with that bike, Honda definitely went with the super nimble and agile approach. It's short in the wheelbase, it gets a slender tyre at the rear, and it sits low in the saddle, so that bike feels absolutely great for nipping through town traffic. But I think out on the open road, the Suzuki is a bit more balanced. Admittedly, it's quite a bit heavier, it's about 10 kilograms or so, but I think that combined with the extra length, you know, it's a longer wheelbase, it gives it some stability that some riders might actually prefer. I really like this bike through corners. It's not as quick turning as the Hornet, but it just feels more planted, and that gives you, I think, a touch more confidence.
Now, suspension comes in the form of an upside-down fork from KYB and a monoshock at the rear, and there's no adjustability apart from the obligatory preload on the shock in case you're carrying luggage or a passenger and you want to keep the bike level, as you should. Thing is though, that's par for the course in this market. None of the competition offer much more adjustability, and so you're pretty much stuck with what you've got here. As for how these settings feel, well, it is a little more taut and firm than the Hornet, for example, and that could be seen as a good thing if you like to ride hard. On the flip side, if comfort is more of a concern for you, then perhaps the Hornet or the super cushy MT-07 might appeal that little bit more. But for me, a bike like this is more engaging and more confidence inspiring if it gives you that extra support.
Now, braking is decent too. You've got 4-piston radially mounted Nissan calipers up front, so not the super bling big name brakes, but they are appropriate for the budget of this bike. And while they're not particularly, aggressive on the initial bite, maybe that's because they've designed it to be somewhat beginner friendly, there's still enough power there to make them satisfying to use when you start to give it a good squeeze. And that's even despite a little bit of a weight penalty on this bike versus the competition. One minor drawback is that I think I'd be quite looking forward to wearing these tyres out. I don't generally love Dunlops like this, especially in the wet. And if you look elsewhere on the market at some of the competition like the Triumph Trident or the MT-07, they come as standard with the excellent Michelin Red 5s, which I think I would like very much on this bike. But look, that's a short-term concern if you're planning to own this bike for a while. And overall, I'd say it's planted, it's engaging, it's nice and firm on the suspension, and it's good on the brakes. So a nice sporty package all round without being too flighty. Now look, one of the big complaints that I've got with the Hornet, you'll know this if you watched either of the videos that I put out about it, is the seat height. It's just too low for my taste. It's 795 millimeters, and I get it, they need to sell bikes, and these affordable middleweights are heavily aimed at newer riders, and most of those beginners are going to feel much more confident if they can get both their feet down easily. But if you passed all that, then 795 mil is just a little bit too sat back and low, and you can't quite get over the front of the bar and ride it in an aggressive and sporty manner, which the engine, to be honest, deserves. But this bike, it sits at 810 millimeters, and whilst 15 mil up doesn't sound like a huge difference, it really does make for a massive improvement from my perspective anyway, in terms of just how the bike feels and how substantial it feels. Then you've got this longer wheelbase, which gives you a little bit more room. The bar position is very natural, so's the foot peg position as well. And so yeah, very comfortable for me at about 5'9" or 175 centimeters. So if you're roughly that height as well, then you're probably going to find it comfortable as well. Now I really like this lovely TFT display. It's 5 inches, full color, and it just looks super punchy and nicely designed and laid out. You've got clear graphics that are easy to read, but also it's got a bit more emotion and dynamism than the sort of sterile looking screen on the Hornet. I'd also say the switchgear here is a little bit nicer to the touch too. They feel quite upmarket really, nicely contoured and good quality plastics. So the cockpit of this bike is very nicely done indeed. Now through this switchgear and dash, you can manage 3 levels of traction control and 3 levels of power, but otherwise that's it. Elsewhere on the market, even at this sort of competitive price point, we're seeing much more and more techie features like Bluetooth connectivity so you can take calls and get sat-nav on the screen. And so maybe for some people this might be a bit disappointingly simple, but I think to others it could almost be a selling point. For me, I quite like the simplicity. The dash is clear and easy to use, and if you really need navigation and stuff like that, you could always mount your phone on the bars with a quad lock. To me, it feels like the budget that they had to build this bike has gone on good fundamentals and a really quite nice build quality rather than techie tricks that you may or may not want. I actually think it's a really nice bike to look at, especially in this white paint job. And the little bits of design are good too. The footrest hangers, for example, the contouring on the swing arm. It's these little things that add up. You also get a proper metal fuel tank as opposed to a plastic shell around a basic metal tank on a lot of the competition. And I even really like the stacked headlights at the front. I know they're a bit divisive, but I appreciate that they've done something modern and interesting as opposed to playing it a bit too safe, which I think could be fair to say of the Honda Hornet. The only real criticism I've got is the indicators. I wish they'd fitted LEDs instead of these rather dated looking old school bulb indicators. And if you do want to upgrade to LEDs, then it's going to cost you about 230 odd quid in the accessories catalogue. But overall, I'd say it's a pretty big tick from me on the styling front.
Perhaps that's to be expected though. At £7,999, it's a grand more than the Honda Hornet. It is a little bit down on power as well, and it's a touch heavier, and it's also simpler in terms of electronics, so you do feel like it's got to make up for it a bit somewhere, but I will say it does feel like the slightly better finished bike. Still, that £7,999 is also about the same as the excellent Triumph Trident 660 and the also excellent KTM 790 Duke. So if you've got £8 to spend, should you really consider buying this Suzuki?
Well, granted, it doesn't have that one headline figure that will make it stand out on the spec sheet, but I think in a way that's its strength. They haven't built it too much down to a price, so you still feel like you're getting a nicely made bike. It's not the most powerful, but the torquey delivery is great for the road, and it might not be the most lightweight or nimble bike, but it is balanced through corners while still being sporty enough.
Now look, there's so much competition in this market segment that you may as well go out and test ride a bunch and pick the one that you absolutely love. And while you're at it, enjoy every minute of your sensible consumer research with this group of excellent motorcycles. Only after doing that will you know which one is right for you personally, but after trying this one for a couple of weeks, I'd wholeheartedly urge you not to rule it out on the basis of the specs and firmly stick it on your shortlist to demo. As always, I'd love to know what you guys think of it, so do let me know down in the comments, especially if you've been lucky enough to take one out for a spin. And if you want to see more reviews like this and you've not already, then do hit subscribe. Many thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next one.